Here are 6 dark traits of an INTJ personality type. Number 1. Ruthless logical detachment. One of the darkest, most confounding traits of an INTJ is their ruthless logical detachment. It's like they have a mental scalpel, cutting through emotions and sentimentality with surgical precision, no matter how messy, painful, or personal the subject. They don't just analyze situations, they dissect them, breaking down complex human experiences into cold, hard facts. This detachment isn't about being heartless on purpose. It's more that their minds are wired to prioritize logic above all else. Emotions are viewed as variables to be controlled or set aside. When faced with conflict, grief, or joy, an INTJ's first response is often to assess the facts, weigh the pros and cons, and calculate the most efficient outcome, even if that means dismissing feelings that others hold sacred. The downside? This can come off as brutal, even cruel. They might tell you uncomfortable truths without a filter, delivering their conclusions in a tone so flat and matter-of-fact it feels like a slap. Empathy takes a backseat to efficiency, and people who expect comforting words often find themselves bewildered or hurt instead. They can detach so thoroughly that sometimes even their own emotions become strangers, locked behind a wall of cold analysis. This dispassion creates a distance between the INTJ and those around them, leaving friends and loved ones wondering if they're truly understood or just subjected to a harsh logical verdict. At its worst, this ruthless logical detachment becomes a double-edged sword, a defense mechanism that protects the INTJ from emotional overwhelm, but also isolates them in a fortress of unyielding reason. It's a trait that demands respect for its clarity and power, but also caution, because its sharp edges can leave deep emotional wounds. If you're willing to delve even deeper into your personality type, we're excited to announce the release of our insightful books. In the first one, you can explore the nuanced dynamics of INTJ relationships and uncover strategies to foster deeper connections based on understanding and compatibility. In the second, you can gain clarity on navigating the intricate terrain of career choices with a guide tailored specifically for INTJs, offering actionable advice to leverage their unique strengths effectively, and finally choose the best career path. As a special offer for our subscribers, we have a promo code available for your purchase. Link is in the description below. Number 2. Merciless perfectionism. One of the darker sides of an INTJ's nature is their merciless perfectionism, a relentless inner drill sergeant that demands excellence from themselves and everyone around them. This isn't the kind of perfectionism that gently nudges you to improve. It's the iron-fisted kind that brooks no excuses, no shortcuts, and no room for error. INTJs set the bar so high, it can feel unreachable, not just for others, but for themselves too. Every project, every interaction, every goal must meet their exacting standards. And if it doesn't, prepare for a torrent of internal frustration and often external critique. They don't sugarcoat their disappointment. If you fall short, an INTJ's feedback can feel like a harsh spotlight, exposing every flaw with cold precision. It's not personal, or at least they don't intend it that way. It's just that imperfection grates against their core need for order, efficiency, and mastery. This perfectionism can create a pressure cooker environment. INTJs push themselves so hard that burnout is a real risk, and those around them often feel the weight of their uncompromising expectations. It's easy to mistake their drive for arrogance or coldness, but beneath the surface is a deep desire for growth and competence. The dark twist: when perfectionism turns toxic, INTJs might obsess over details to the point of paralysis, or alienate people with their unyielding standards. It's a double-edged sword, fueling greatness but also breeding dissatisfaction and distance. Number 3. Intolerance for inefficiency or incompetence. To an INTJ, inefficiency isn't just annoying, it's almost morally offensive. It violates their internal code of order, logic, and forward motion. They don't understand how others can fumble through simple processes, waste time with redundancy, or ignore glaring problems that could have been solved 10 steps ago. And when it happens, they don't hide their disdain. Whether it's a poorly managed meeting, a scatterbrained coworker, or a traffic system that makes zero sense, their irritation simmers just beneath the surface, sometimes boiling over in sharp critique or passive withdrawal. INTJs are hardwired for optimization. They're systems thinkers. They see how things should work, and when people get in the way of that ideal with carelessness, laziness, or emotional overcomplication, the INTJ brain short circuits in quiet fury. This can make them brutally honest, sometimes to the point of being harsh. They don't always sugarcoat their feedback, especially if they think you're capable of more. In their mind, they're doing you a favor, cutting out the fluff, handing you the direct path to improvement. But to others, it can feel like being verbally clotheslined. At its darkest, this trait can turn into elitism, a sense that most people are too slow, too irrational, or too fragile to operate at the level the INTJ expects. And while it's often not meant maliciously, it can create a chilling distance between them and the rest of the world. A sense of, I'd rather do it myself, that eventually leads to isolation. Efficiency is their native language. And when others don't speak it, INTJs often stop trying to translate. Number 4. Emotional suppression to the extreme. INTJs are often seen as cold, collected, and nearly unshakable. But that control comes at a price. They tend to suppress emotions so thoroughly you'd think they'd surgically removed them. They don't cry in public. They rarely lash out. And vulnerability? That's stored way in a vault 3 floors below consciousness, guarded by sarcasm and a firewall of logic. It's not that they don't feel, they do, sometimes deeply, but their instinct is to manage those feelings the same way they manage a complex system: categorize, compartmentalize, and, if necessary, quarantine. They believe emotion clouds judgment, so they strip it out of decisions, conversations, even relationships, in favor of clarity and control. But the darkness creeps in quietly, because what's buried doesn't stay buried. That unresolved grief, that unspoken anger, that decades-old disappointment, it festers behind the scenes, shaping their behavior in ways even they might not notice. Emotional suppression becomes emotional distortion. They may appear calm on the outside while internally unraveling. And when those suppressed emotions finally breach the surface, often triggered by something small and unrelated, the release can be intense, disorienting, and hard to understand, even for them. At their best, INTJs use emotional discipline to navigate high-stress situations with grace. At their worst, they become emotionally unavailable, ghosts in their own relationships, unreachable even to the people who love them most. And ironically, it's often not strength keeping them silent, it's fear. Fear that if they open the floodgates, the logic will drown. Number 5. Calculating manipulation. INTJs don't manipulate for fun. They manipulate for results. And that's what makes it unnerving. There's no dramatic scheming, no theatrical plotting, just quiet observation, strategic thinking, and a cold understanding of how to move the pieces without anyone realizing they're playing a game. They see patterns in people, motivations, insecurities, habits, all cataloged and analyzed. So, when an INTJ wants to influence an outcome, they don't argue or beg. They engineer. They plant ideas subtly, frame suggestions to feel like your own, or withhold key pieces of information to steer your decision without lifting a finger. It's not always malicious, sometimes it's even protective. INTJs might justify it as helping or guiding, especially if they think they know what's best, and let's be honest, they often do. But this high-level persuasion can easily veer into emotional manipulation, especially when empathy is left out of the equation. The truly dark part? They can do it with zero emotional investment. While others are tangled in feelings and social cues, INTJs are 10 moves ahead, pulling levers in silence. And if you realize it too late, you'll look back and realize they didn't argue you into something. They simply made resistance irrelevant. They don't need power to feel powerful. They just need control of the board. And if you're not paying attention, you might discover you were a pawn in a plan they never announced. Number 6. Isolationist tendencies. INTJs don't just enjoy solitude, they require it, like oxygen. But this isn't your typical introvert recharge routine. INTJ isolation goes deeper. It's a fortress, a silent, impenetrable retreat from the noise, inefficiency, and emotional turbulence of the world. At first it seems healthy, the classic lone wolf persona, mysterious and self-contained. But over time, their isolation can harden. What was once a refuge becomes a bunker. They stop explaining themselves, stop reaching out, stop expecting others to understand their intensity, their ideas, their silence. Why? Because in their mind, people often disappoint. Small talk drains them, emotional chaos overwhelms them, and being misunderstood again and again starts to feel like an inevitability. So they retreat, not dramatically, just subtly, steadily, until you realize you haven't heard from them in weeks or months. And the darkest part, they often like it that way. They convince themselves they don't need connection, not really. That solitude is safer, cleaner, more efficient. But deep down, beneath the control and independence, many INTJs quietly crave connection. They just want it to be real, meaningful, and low maintenance, a tall order in a noisy world. So they wait, observing, withdrawing, building lives inside their own minds while the external world becomes something they visit, not inhabit. It's not loneliness they fear, it's the mess of being known. These videos will be really helpful for you.